everybody, this is Liz Spurlock from Hortus Health coming to you today with a new activity. We are celebrating fall and we are going to make an apple pie. So the reason this activity was spurred was because some of our community outings, now that the season is changing and the air is getting cooler, we visited the local apple orchard. This is a great fall activity, not only because the apples are delicious, but it's good to get outside. It gets you walking. The orchards that I've been, sometimes you're walking up hills, so you're getting a little bit of exercise in. And not only the exercise, but you're also getting yourself a healthy snack. Now, while apple pie might not be the most healthy snack you can have, it certainly is delicious and very easy to make. So today we're going to do just that. So first I'm going to tell you about the things that you need. You need to, of course, have your apples. And what you will need are 6 cups of peeled and thinly sliced apples. Or that can equate to roughly 6 medium-sized apples. So a medium-sized apple might look a little bit like this, and here's a very small apple for comparison. So 6 medium-sized apples, and if they are on a smaller side, you just need to add a few more. Okay, we also need our pie crust, and since this is an easy apple pie, we're not going to make our pie crust from scratch, but we're going to buy a pie crust from the refrigerated section at the grocery store. These come in 2 rolls, and they're ready to use. We also need some cinnamon, we need some nutmeg, we need a little bit of salt, we need lemon, we need sugar, flour, and that's all we need in terms of our ingredients, but more importantly than our ingredients are the tools that we're going to need. So I do have a measuring cup so that we can measure out how many apples that we have. I have a large bowl so that when we peel and slice the apples, we can throw them right in there and toss them with the other ingredients. We have, of course, a pie dish, one of the most important things, as well as a couple measuring spoons. I have my teaspoon and my tablespoon, and then you can see here my cutting board and a knife, whatever knife you feel comfortable with. It needs to be sharp enough to cut through the apple, but you don't need anything crazy, as well as a peeler. And some of these, there are different types of peelers, so I'm actually going to use this one today, but a lot of times our peelers look like this. We use it for carrots, potatoes, other fruits and vegetables that have skins on them. And if you do not have a peeler, you could use a very small knife. We call it a paring knife, and you could peel the skin off of the apples using that knife as well. So let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is we need to set our oven. I have it preheating at 375 degrees, so that's already on and heating up for us. The second thing we need to do is we have our apples, but they need to be washed, and I actually already did that before we got started. The reason you need to wash your apples, especially if you go pick them from the orchard, is that they've been outside on a tree. And I know the apples that I picked, while I looked for the ones that didn't really have any brown spots or wormholes or anything like that, they did have dirt on them, they did have cobwebs, there were some spiders, which I don't like, but you want to give them a really good rinse in the sink. And so what you're going to do, turn your water on and almost massage them, rub them real good while the water is running over them, so you can make sure that you get all the dirt, all the bugs, everything else off there. And sometimes I even focus on this little part in here because there were a lot of like little cobwebs almost in there. So now that your apples are clean, you're going to go ahead and start peeling them. So like I said, I'm going to use this peeler here, and what I usually do is I start from the top and I go down the apple, down to the bottom. Okay, likewise, if I were to use a peeler like this, start at the top and I go right down in a downward motion. It is easier to go away from yourself, similar to like when you open a box, you don't want to go towards yourself because you could cut yourself or hit yourself. Also, when I peel apples, I also try to keep my fingers out of the way because you don't want to, if you get your finger with this, it is probably going to take a little skin off, just like it's taking the skin off of the fruit. So we're going to keep going. We're going to peel all of our apples. You want to make sure that you get all of the skin off, and you just keep working your way around the apple. All right, so I'm going to keep going until we have 6 medium-sized apples peeled. Okay. All right. Now you'll see that I have a little bit of skin on the top and on the bottom, and that's okay because in our next step we're actually going to cut around that. We're going to get the core out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get all of our apples peeled. So apple number 1, let's keep going. Alright guys, so as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 apples ready to be sliced. Okay, so I'm just going to move these peels out of the way. And as you can see, I have a bowl over here to the side. This is not something that's required, but it is something that makes it a little bit more helpful. So this is where I like to put my scraps so that I always have a clean workspace. Okay, so remember I talked to you about this middle part, and I said this is called the core of the apple. If you've ever taken an apple and just took a bite out of it, you know you always eat around until you get to the middle where the seeds are. That is the core, and that's the part we don't want in our pie. Nobody wants to be spitting seeds while eating apple pie. So let me move these out of the way so you can see. So what we're going to do is when I cut my apples, I like to go along the sides, right along the sides, 4 sides in total. Alright, so I cut them into chunks, and if you do have a little bit of skin left, you can see I do here, just rub your knife along it, and you can just get it off. Okay, so, and honestly, if there's a little bit of skin in your pie, it's still going to taste great. So all I'm going to do is just run my knife right along all these slices. We're making thin slices. Now you want to try to make sure that all of the slices are about the same size, because when it bakes, if you have slices that are, let's say, like this versus thin like this one, it's going to cook unevenly, and then you're going to have some hard crunchy apples in there, as opposed to all nice juicy softened apples in your pie. So you want to try to make sure that you cut them all about the same size. So I'm going to go ahead, actually I'm going to put these in my bowl so that I can measure and make sure that I have enough apples. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep slicing up my apples. And if you noticed, I filled up my measuring cup and then poured it back, or filled it up once, dumped it in, and then filled it up halfway again. So what you want to pay attention to is how many cups your measuring cup is. I happen to have a 4-cup measuring cup. You may only have a 1-cup measuring cup. And sometimes you can even use things that are not measuring cups if you don't have one. So for example, a coffee mug many times is the same amount as 1 cup. So you could even use that as your measuring cup. You might have also noticed that it only took me 4 apples to get my 6 cups. So my apples might have been a little bit larger than what the recipe called as medium. So you just kind of have to see where it ends up, and that's why we use our measuring cups. Okay, so we have our apples here sliced and ready to go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mix all of the rest of our ingredients in with our apples, with the exception of the pie crust, because that will go in the pie dish. So we're going to start with our sugar. We need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So this is my 1/4 cup measuring cup. So I'm going to do 1, and you can see it's even across. So that means it's exactly 1/4 of a cup. So 1, 2, 3. Because 3 1/4 cups equals 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Okay, we also need 3 tablespoons of flour. So we have, and you're going to see me do this. So I have, see how it's kind of going over the edge of the spoon? I'm going to use my clean finger, wash your hands. I'm going to use my clean finger and go straight across the top so that I know that it's an even tablespoon. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 tablespoons of flour. We need, now I'm going to use my teaspoon, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And that's what I think really gives apple pie the best flavor. That cinnamon gives it a warmer flavor. Okay, we need 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So I'm gonna eyeball this. This is 1 teaspoon. So quarters, that means it's broken up into 4. So if I were to be able to visualize what would 4 parts of this teaspoon be, that's what I'm gonna do to measure my salt. So I'm gonna do, and really, this doesn't need to be, this is the type of recipe that doesn't need to be perfect. If it's a little over, a little under, it's still gonna taste good. Okay, we need 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. So that's really small. You could almost call that a pinch or a dash. So we put our nutmeg in, and we also need a tablespoon of lemon juice. So you can use a fresh lemon, or you could even just buy a bottle of lemon juice, or sometimes we see those plastic lemons in the store that you can just squeeze the juice. So I'm going to do this, and again, I'm going to eyeball it. I do have my let's do our tablespoon. So we're going to get a tablespoon of lemon juice, and you want to be careful because you don't want the seeds to get in there. All right, tablespoon of lemon juice. All right. So those are all the ingredients that get mixed up with our apples. Now here, you can use a spoon, a spatula, or you can use your good old hands. I think that your hands are the best things to use when you mix up something like this, because you want all of these apples to get really nice and coated with all of this yummy sugar and cinnamon and flour. So again, making sure that you have clean hands. Fall is cold and flus, they start. You always want to make sure you have clean hands. Don't be rubbing your nose while you're cooking. If you sneeze, stop and wash your hands. Clean hands. All right, so we're going to go ahead and mix this up and make sure that everything is coated. Okay, that smells yummy. All right, mix it up. Mix it up. And I think that looks, uh-oh, 2 runaways. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my hands because they're covered in cinnamon and sugar. All right, so we're gonna set this off to the side. We're getting closer, guys. Okay, let's put these over here. Now we're gonna go ahead and open up our pie crust. So when you buy refrigerated pie crust like this from the store, it'll come in 2 different rolls. So you're going to take the first one, gently, because this is delicate, very gently unroll it right on top of your pie plate. So you can see, this is why you have to be careful. See how it's starting to break apart a little bit right here? That's okay, don't worry. All we have to do is dough. So it's very, what we might want to call pliable or stretchy, or it can be formed back to what we want it. So I'm just gonna push this down so it forms into the bottom of our plate, okay? And then, where there's any of these areas where it started to separate, you just kind of overlap it and pinch it back together. Once it bakes, you will have no idea that that broke. Okay. Now you do want it to overhang the edge of the pie dish, and you want it to be in there evenly, okay? You don't want it to be a little bit more on this side, because once you put the top on, you're actually going to connect those two pie crusts and put them together, okay? Next, dump in our apples, the stars of the show. All right, and make sure you get all that good cinnamon sugar that might be left on the bottom. Okay, you're going to want to spread them out so they're even and all inside this dough. Okay, just gonna rinse my hands again one more time. Okay, now we're going to get our other pie crust. If I can open it. Alright. And we are going to, again, gently, sometimes it gets stuck right at the seam, but that's okay. Just gently use your fingers, pull it back, unroll it again, right, and place it on top. Again, nice and evenly so that all of the sides can match up. You can see here, see how the top and there's the bottom? All right, now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go around, and I kind of like to roll this top piece over the bottom piece, and then you're going to do what they call crimping. So I just take my two fingers like this and pinch them together. Roll and pinch. Roll and pinch. You could also just as easily roll these together and then use a fork to make sure that it seals. So the purpose of doing this is to make sure that your two edges of pie crust seal, so that when your pie bakes, they'll start to release some water, and it makes the juices and the syrup that's kind of inside of the apple pie, and that just helps keep it all inside of the pie crust and not over it. Okay, do you see some of those little cracks around the edges? That's already. We're just gonna do our best to smooth them back together. All right, because what we're going to do is we're gonna use our knife here right at the end, and we're just gonna cut a little slit in this pie. And the reason that we do this, we do 3 of them. You can do 3, you can do 4, you can do as many as you want. But probably 3 or 4 is fine. You can see them right on top. There's 1, 2, 3. The reason we do that is because as the apples cook, they'll start to release steam. So you can think of this as like a pot. If you cook something and you put a lid on, it keeps all of that steam or hot air inside. And if there's too much, sometimes it goes boom. So we put this, we put these slits in here so that it can let some of the air go out, so that all the juices stay in and it doesn't get mushy. Okay, our pie is ready for the oven. Remember, we set it at 375 degrees, and we're gonna go ahead and put that in the oven right now. Okay guys, so our pie is in the oven, and what we're gonna do is we are going to set a timer for 40 minutes, okay? So it's going to take between 40 and 50 minutes. And again, this all depends on some people's ovens work better than others, some are older, all different types of ovens. It's okay. So we're gonna gonna check it at 40 minutes because the rule of thumb is you don't wanna let something bake too long because you can't bring it back from that. You'd rather let it cook under and then let it go a few more minutes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bake it for 40 minutes, but I'm gonna set a timer for 20 minutes because I wanna check on how the crust is browning. If it's getting too brown around the edges, which sometimes happens, you're gonna get some strips of foil and you're gonna put it around the edges so that it doesn't get too burned or too dark. So we're gonna set our timer and we'll check back then. Alright guys, 20 minutes has gone by and I pulled my pie out of the oven. You might also notice that I have it on a cookie sheet. Remember I talked about how the juices can start to bubble up in there? Well, you're a little bit safer putting a cookie sheet underneath it. Learn from me because I have a little bit of apple juice in the bottom of my oven. It's okay. But also what I want you to take notice to is that the edges of this pie crust are starting to become a really nice golden brown. And we don't want them to get too brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut off thin strips of foil like this, and very, 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 very carefully, I'm going to crimp them around the edges because this pie is hot. It was in a very hot oven. All right, just enough. This one's a little bit thick. These don't have to be perfect, but you just want to cover it enough so that it protects the edges of your pie from getting too brown. All right, let's get one last strip on there. All right. And we're gonna go ahead and put this back in the oven for 20 minutes. So I'll see you back then. Okay guys, we're back. I finally taken the pie out of the oven. The other 20 minutes has gone by. So my pie actually baked for probably close to 50 minutes. But like I said, everybody's oven's a little bit different, so you always want to check. Set the time a little bit at the lesser end of the time, and just continue to check as it goes to make sure that it looks perfect. So I took the foil off the edges. You can see now that everything has a nice golden brown on top, and it really smells delicious. So this apple pie not only was a great activity to bounce off of our apple orchard visit, but now I have a pie that can create another activity or some more social interactions. So some of us may plan to share our apple pie just with our family. Maybe we will decide to plan a Sunday dinner and create a menu and invite some friends over. Or maybe you just decide that you would like to share it with a neighbor. Either way, this is creating great opportunities for socialization and communication with others. If this video helped you or you know someone else this could help, please make sure that you check out our Instagram and Facebook page and reach us at HortusHealthPA@gmail.com. Come back soon. Bye guys.